Welcome to the MyLifeInConcert.com podcast. I'm your host, various artists, and please join me as I travel back and revisit every live show I've seen from 1975 to the present. It was Friday the 13th, August 1982. Now, I'm not a superstitious man. I'm more down with Stevie Wonder when he wrote and sang, "When you believe in things that you don't understand, then you suffer. Superstition ain't the way." But this was certainly a one-of-a-kind concert-going experience, and a Friday the 13th like this one gives me pause for thought. You know, there are many ways to identify and celebrate specific gigs that stand out in your mind as a one-off or extreme or unique, that epitomize some particular honor or benchmark of sorts. For example, I could say or talk about, what is the loudest concert I've ever been to? Well, that would be Dinosaur Jr. at the Ottawa Music Hall, which is concert number 146 on the blog. You can read the entry. It was, at the music hall for about 500 people with a wall of amps, probably more for an arena. And that show was in January of 2010. Or I could look at, what is the longest and most expensive concert I've ever been to? Well, that would be Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young at Scotiabank Place in Ottawa, Saturday, July 8th, 2006. Coming down the road, it will be concert 111. It was 4 hours and $400, although I can't really say it was the most expensive because the tickets were gifted to us, as it were. But still. Or I could look at, what is the longest wait to get into a show? Well, I've covered that off already in the last episode, episode 16, concert 10, and that was OMD at Centennial Hall here in London, March 9th, 82, standing out in the freezing cold for a long time. And then there's the concert I'm going to talk to you about today. Dear listeners, stick around and join me in reliving the gig that gets my personal award for the worst concert experience of my entire life. Police Picnic 82, with the Police, the Talking Heads, the Beat or the English Beat, depending on where you live in the world, Joan, Jett and the Blackhearts, A Flock of Seagulls, and the Spoons at CNE Stadium, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, Friday, August the 13th, 1982. And this episode is entitled, What a Day That Was. Also, special guest returns once again. He was at the gig, and with both of us, neither of us really have strong memories about particular songs. In fact, I only remember 3 specific songs from the day, but we certainly remember the sets in general, and each of us has some hilarious tales from the day. His are a lot more positive, mine are coming up. First, I'd like to remind listeners to check out the MyLifeInConcert.com blog, and there's an entry for this story featuring additional videos, the original ticket, details about the show that I don't cover in the podcast. Plus, I have up some Spotify playlists. Actually, I've got 4 on the blog corresponding to this one. First, I have one that playlist for all the bands at this festival. I've also got a playlist for the Talking Heads, one of my favorite bands of all time, and probably, as I talked about in Heatwave, probably did the best live show I've ever seen. And it's a playlist of a lot of my, not really the Talking Heads hits, but more deep cuts, obscurities, live tracks, that sort of thing. Some of my favorite Talking Head stuff. Also, because the Spoons were part of the lineup, and we'll be talking about them today. Canada's own Spoons from Hamilton, Ontario. They were an early 80s new wave band. And I put up a playlist of Canadian New Wave from the early 80s. Canadian New Wave, with wave spelled W-E-H-V. Haha. And also an overview of what music was rocking my world in 1982. As I'm going along, I'm doing one for each year, just sort of what I was playing, what I was listening to, and I've got one up there for the year 1982 in general. And my username on Spotify is Various Artists, but it's easier to find the playlists by doing a search, as they all begin with capital MLIC. Also, please like, follow, and subscribe where appropriate on Facebook and Instagram, and also check out our YouTube channel. Now, this concert takes place 6 months after the OMD concert, which was my last episode 16. And that was at Centennial Hall, London, Ontario, March of 1982. So it's 6 months later, and going to this second police picnic are the same three from OMD, myself, Lady B, and Le Chateau. So we went from freezing outside in that gig to baking in the sun at this one. Now, I mentioned that the three of us met in late 81, and throughout 82, the three of us were really hanging out a lot and doing a lot of stuff together. And so we all went to this second gig together, three of us going to another gig together. Now, this concert in particular truly kicks off about a decade of serious and uninterrupted live music going. Now, up until now, it's been a little bit of a sputter, a few gigs every year here and there, stops and starts. This show really is the beginning, and it just goes from here solidly. For the rest of this year, I see almost a gig a month. And then at the end of the year, beginning of the next year, that's when myself, Lady B, Le Chateau, we met a whole group of people, part of the downtown music scene, and really became enmeshed in that. And I'll be talking all about that when I get to the Gang of Four concert from early 83, coming up in a few episodes. So this point, there's just a lot of music coming up. 1983 in particular, there's a lot of shows from that year. There's a lot of gigs coming up from that year. But the peak really comes in this first wave during 88 and 89. There's a ton of shows in those years. And so this pretty much goes till the early-ish 90s. Then I kind of went for a period of the early 90s to mid-noughties where I was still seeing shows, but not as much. But really, it's from 2006 to 2017. That's really the juggernaut. In those 11 years, I saw as many shows as I've seen in the other 33. So there's a lot of shows coming up. Hopefully, I will live long enough to get through them all. So this was the second of 3 police picnics in Toronto, and the third of 4 consecutive summers wherein I went to a large outdoor music festival, starting with Heatwave in August 1980, and I've already talked all about that amazing day in shows and my whole adventures, including being stranded in the middle of nowhere the next morning. That's episode 10 in the podcast series, concert number 8. And of course, 2 episodes back was episode 15. It was the first police picnic in 1981 in a big field way outside Toronto in Oakville. And there was some great music that day. It was a more behaved festival for me. Once again, episode 15, concert number 9. And of course, Heatwave had the Talking Heads, Elvis Costello, Pretenders, B-52s, Rockpile, Teenage Head, and more. And Police Picnic 81 had the Police, the Specials, Iggy Pop, the Go-Go's, Killing Joke, Nash, the Slash, Oingo Boingo, the Payolas, and the David Bendeth Band. Now, on the bill at this festival, it was shrunk down to just 6 acts, and that's probably because the festival of the year before, there were so many delays and everything went really late. So, of course, the headliners were the Police. Now, as special guests and I discussed in episode 15, neither one of us nor the people I went to the show with were impressed with the Police. They really didn't have a good night out at that festival. But they were headlining again. We were going to be going. Really, the 2 bands we were most going to see were the second in headlining, and that's the Talking Heads. And of course, I've talked all about seeing them at Heatwave and how incredible that was. And but Lady B and Le Chateau hadn't seen them. By this point, everyone had really absorbed their music, as we'll talk about, and they were very, very excited to see them. And as you'll find out, they were not disappointed. The other band we were really big on seeing was the Beat, or the English Beat, as they're called in North America. Especially Lady B and I. We were big fans, and we had both really been obsessed over their first album, I Just Can't Stop It, when it came out here in late summer, fall of 1980, and also the follow-up, What Happened, from 1981. So we were pretty pumped for that. Now, Joan, Jett, and the Blackhearts were on the bill, and I loved her in The Runaways, and I loved her song Bad Reputation. But in the interim, she'd had her mega hit, I Love Rock and Roll, which at the time, because everything was so polarized, we talk about this later on in the podcast. And I was so sick of formulaic mainstream sort of American rock that was coming out. And at the time, I Love Rock and Roll, I kind of saw it as part of that. So at this moment, I wasn't a big fan. Now, I've changed my mind. I've seen Joan and Jett again, which we'll talk about, and I like the song now. But at the time, at this one window of time, I wasn't really a fan. Now, there was also a Flock of Seagulls. Now, at the time, they were a brand new UK new wave electropop group, and we knew they had this rising hit out called I Ran, which I'd heard a couple of times, but that was really it. We didn't know much about them. I don't know if we really knew about Mike Score's infamous hairdo, but if we didn't, that was coming. And finally, opening the show, as I've mentioned, Hamilton, Ontario's own Spoons. Now, they had started off more as a Talking Heads-ish new wave kind of band, but then really became more of a new wave electro pop, that kind of thing, which they were sort of morphing into here around this point. I didn't know a ton about them, but I had heard their music on CHRW, and I did like them, and I liked the electro pop and that kind of stuff. So I liked them, but I didn't really know much and was looking forward to seeing them. Now, I have also on the blog put up a video that I have for my own archives. There's a few I'm putting up, but there's one I put up with this, and it's the Spoons in 1983 on the New Music, which was an amazing show that ran out of Toronto for several years. And it's the Spoons in 1983 surprising their teenage fans. Do yourself a favor. It's just a short vid. You have to see this. Go to the mylifeinconcert.com blog. And for the entry for this podcast, check out the video. All right. So without further ado, okay, let's just jump into the interview with special guests and I talking about this long and eventful day. Take it away. I'm once again joined by special guests from, you're just outside of Leeds now, aren't you?
Yes. In Keighley, not Keighley.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I got it.
It's all right. A lot of people get it mixed up. I only just remembered that you'd said it Keighley last time in the last one.
One of my many errors. It's Keighley. It's called Keighley.
Yeah, that's how it's pronounced. But it looks like Keighley.
Oh,
it doesn't matter. So anyway,
is it named after Keith Richards?
No.
Oh,
it's surprisingly older than him.
Really? Wow. Okay. Well, it's saying something for all of us. But okay. So we talked. You were here for episode 15 on Police Picnic 81 in Oakville, and now it's a year later. It's CNE Stadium in downtown Toronto, and it's Police Picnic 82. So what do you remember first hearing about it, lead up to it, that sort of thing?
I don't remember hearing about it. I don't remember that at all. The lead up, because there wasn't a big group. There was me and another friend of mine. So this time I went with Wendy. So I don't remember the lead up. I can't remember if we went together or she went to Toronto first because we stayed at a friend of hers. So I don't kind of remember the actual going to Toronto for it. I remember the lead up. I remember the lead up on the day. We sat in a little sort of green space just next to the Eaton Centre, drinking vodka and orange. And she was putting black eyeliner on me.
Oh, okay. Neat.
While we were sat drinking, because obviously you can't drink in public spaces back then. I don't know whether it's changed in Canada or not. But,
No, you can't drink in. You still have to be, in a bar or something like that.
oh, right,
Walk
okay.
down the street, kind of with it.
Yeah. So I think we sort of drank some vodka straight, and then because we were putting the orange juice in the vodka. Oh no, we were putting the vodka into the orange juice. Anyway, that's what we drank probably that odd bottle of vodka before we actually got there, and then we walked to the stadium. 'Cause I think it wasn't that far away from the center, was it? I can't remember.
No, it's not that. It's not that far. It's not that far. It's not like they're right next door, but it's not that far.
Yeah, I remember when we were walking along, and we started talking to this guy who was from Scotland. I don't know, I can't remember whereabouts, but I remember he kind of hung out with us most of the day. Although he had a seated ticket and we had a general admission ticket, but then we managed to get him into the general admission area.
This is actually some of the things from your day are somewhat similar to some of the experiences we had, although yours seemed of a much more positive nature than what I'll be chronicling shortly. Anyway.
Okay. Yeah, that was it. He kind of hung out with us for a while. Who was on first? I can't remember now. You have to remind me.
Well, it was the Spoons.
Oh, yeah.
But I have to go through how we got there and we
Yeah.
got in. That's quite a story. So it's the same three of us who went to the OMD gig in March, which was the last episode. And Lady B and I had gone to, in the previous episode for that, Police Picnic 81. And after, we had fun at it. And this was 2 summers in a row I'd been to a festival. When we heard about Police Picnic 82, it's like, oh, we're definitely going. Also, the Talking Heads were on the bill. And It was like, because to this day, I still think the Heatwave set was the best set I've seen by a band. So I really wanted to see them again. Also, since seeing that set, all the people in sort of my circle had really fallen in love with them and from that album. So the thing was, though, is as you said, you couldn't take booze in. And I don't recall them selling alcohol at these places in these days.
I don't remember that. I don't think they did.
No. And so we thought, how are we going to get booze in? So we came up with this ingenious method and idea. Is we got Lady B's parents had this old school sort of, big picnic cooler from the 50s. And what we did is we decided we were going to have screwdrivers as well, vodka and orange. And what we did is we went out and bought 2 or 3 big cartons of ginger ale in those, cardboard cartons.
Oh, yeah.
And we got them home, and we used a straight razor to just open, the lip, because we couldn't really open it wide because it had to look sealed. So we couldn't make any creases in the box, and we just slit through and then took the razor blade and made this slit indentation in one side, took a straw that we had attached. And first we just poured some out through the slit. Then we took a straw with a funnel and slowly poured vodka into the 3 bottles. And we did this about 3 days before the gig. And so there was no marks, nothing got bent. And then we got contact cement to cement it together and put on clamps so that it would hold. And we kept them in Lady B's fridge for a few days. So a couple of days, take them out, they look like brand new bottles of orange juice right from the shelf. And so amazing, we had 3 bottles of pre-mixed screwdrivers to take in, and some sandwiches, so that's kind of nice. So we had some food. But the one thing is back in those days, we all used to take speed pills, or bennies as we call them, just sort of cheap, cheap speed to keep the day going. And at that point, we're all taking them, and the idea of being at an all-day event and not having bennies, well, that's just not cricket. And But it was this weird thing where even though they were like candy and everyone had them, right at the time of this concert, I don't know if a lab had gotten busted or whatever, but they just suddenly became scarce. We couldn't find any. And we were like, oh no. And then the night before the show, I get a call from someone who knew we were looking and I often dealt with, and why don't you just come on by for a little bit? So I went over and they had gotten a small bag of pills. And they're saying, no, this is someone I don't usually deal with, but anyway, here they are, knew you wanted some, and they grabbed some for themselves. So we also went on Music Man tours.
Oh, right.
Yeah. Did you ever go on Music Man or?
No, I don't think so. No, just once. But that was like I went with my sister to see Diana Ross, and I think that was through Music Man. But that's about it.
Because for those people outside the region and not of that time, Music Man, MANN, was this concert shuttle service from here in London, Ontario, and generally it would shuttle people to concerts in Toronto, Detroit, or Buffalo.
Yeah.
And this is the one and only time that we went through Music Man. We thought nobody has to drive and blah, blah, blah. We're going to be partying our asses off. So we arrived there in the morning and we have bought the tickets. Now at this point, I had been to Police Picnic and Heatwave. They were all out in this big field. I had been to shows by the Boomtown Rats and Bob Seger at the London Gardens and Roxy Music at the London Arena, and even Elvis Costello, I'm pretty sure, at Alumni Hall. None of these concerts had ticketed seats. And so this, like you were saying earlier, like you had seats on the floor, this guy had a seat in the stands. We didn't get this. This had not been part of my concert going before, and because none of us had been to a big concert at a stadium, we just didn't get that. We thought you just wander in and sit wherever you want, and early. And so we arrived there, and we have this big cooler, and the guy driving the Music Man bus says, you realize you're going to be sitting up in the stands. He looks at our tickets. You're not even going to have any place to put this. And we're like, no, we're going to be on the floor. We don't want to sit up there. If your tickets for but your tickets for up there, but no, we're going to be down on the floor. And the guy was being reasonable and trying to tell us, stop being idiots. This is you have tickets, you're sitting there. And we were like, oh no, don't worry about, just naive idiocy. But not naive idiocy. We just didn't know. It's when you don't know, you don't know. And we didn't quite get what he was explaining to us. So anyway, we get on the bus starts, and I break out the pills. Now, I'd gotten them the night before. The person who had bought them hadn't had any, so we each take a couple. And within very short... What time was that? Oh, this must have been probably 11 in the 10:30, 11 in the morning. Yeah. Youth. So anyway, we just immediately, it was like instant flu. Really, really upset stomach. We had really pounding headaches. We just, when you have the flu, you just feel like death and you don't want to go anywhere and you can't. That's what it felt like. And it was instant. And we realized, okay. And it's the one and only time in my life I took bad pills or bad whatever. Thank God it's the only time. And it just got worse as the trip went along. So that by the time we got there, ideally what we would have wanted is to be in a cool, dark, silent room. And instead, we were about to spend the day with 60,000 other people in the baking sun for hours at a festival. Yes!
Yeah, it was quite hot. I remember that.
Yeah, it was very hot that day. But it was just, we just felt like total shit. And so we get in. Now, there's one really incredible thing that happened that day. It's incredible, but there's also a negative. The incredible thing was, and I have no idea, how this happened, knowing how these things work now in security. But for some reason, we had this stuff. They just let us walk right out into the field. Nobody checked our ticket. No explanation. We did end up on the field. Now, luckily, we'd gone to the bathroom just before going in because we sort of plopped down, got a place to plop down, and we were trying to figure out, like, because we noticed they were checking tickets. I don't know, we got talking to someone there, not our neighbors in front of us, who I'll be talking about shortly, but some other people, and it's through talking with them that we finally got it, that we had specific seats we were assigned to that are up in the stands, and that if we went out to use the bathroom, we'd have to show our ticket to get back in, which means we probably wouldn't. So that meant we couldn't go to the bathroom for the day. And it's like, oh, no, which would be, it would be impossible. I can't go 2 hours. It would just be impossible. Back then, it's like, oh, God. And it was, just awful. And meanwhile, we had gone through all this process, gotten everything in. The last thing in the world I would even consider drinking was alcohol. Like I wanted like a glass of water, and the idea of even smelling it made me want to retch. So there we were. Great start to our day. So as back to the show itself, now the first band on was the Spoons. Do you have any memories of their set, of their being on stage, or about the Spoons in general?
No, none of that. It's weird. I just fleeting memories of them, I think, from that day. I saw them at Fried Fogels once.
Do you recall when that was?
I remember, I think it was a weekday. I can't remember. It wasn't very busy, and because they were kind of well known at that point, I think.
I just thought for people outside of Canada, they're probably not as well known outside of Canada.
Oh, no, they're not known. I don't think they're known outside of Canada at all.
Okay, so the Spoons they started out kind of in the early 80s as kind of a Talking Heads-ish sort of band, but quickly morphed into sort of like a pop, new romantic, new wave pop band. And they actually got quite popular here and had a number of hits, which I like. I still like their songs.
I never did. I don't think I ever disliked them. I think they got there was a lot of feeling that they were a bit pretentious, but maybe that's because they used synthesizers. I don't know. That out of the people that I knew, they didn't particularly like them because of that.
Well, and also too, there was, I think, the thing of, they're getting a bit successful now. I can't like them.
I know. Yeah. See, that's the thing. I could never understand. It's like, oh no, you're too successful now. You've sold out. It's like, don't professional musicians want to be successful so that they can make a living?
Yeah, exactly. But some people, it's like, no, I just want them to be my private little thing. But anyway, I'm like, musicians have to make a living. Yeah,
of course. So, but no, getting back to them on the day, I don't know. I don't remember a lot of them.
No, I don't really recall anything about their set either, although that probably has less to do with the music and more that we were like, oh, God, shoot me now. Whoa, one thing I do remember about starting with that set, going through the first 4 sets, I don't know if this was the case where you are, because we were down on the floor probably about halfway sort of into the field.
I think we were out there, yeah.
And if you were facing the stage, we would have been on the left side of the field. And they came on. The sound was terrible. For the first 4 acts of the day, it was the worst sound I've ever heard at a big gig. And it seemed to be phasing between full treble and full bass. And the mixed middle would come and go. It was driving us crazy on top of everything else.
I bet. I don't remember that.
Actually, when you're saying remembering that, one thing I just remembered, and I'm going to find this and put it up in the next couple of weeks. But remember the new music, the show The New Music?
Yeah.
I've got a video, and it's I think it's when the Spoons' second or third album was coming out. And the Spoons fan club had in 3 teenagers who were Spoons fans, and then the band showed up in the interview. It's hilarious. It's free. You remember that?
I remember going to your house and you showed it to us because I think we were having one of our video nights at your house on that video nights, and you showed us that video, and it was quite funny because they just absolutely freaked out.
Yeah, it's like it's really sweet to watch now, but it's like they're just like freaking out. There's these teenagers, and the ones asking, do you have a girlfriend? And I'll digitize that. I've got actually a great Stiv Bators interview I'm putting up too. It's 3 minutes of the ultimate rock and roll video, but I'll find that one and put it up. It's really funny.
Yeah, I look forward to that.
And the other thing I will throw in. That it's not about their set, but this early part of the day is, we found a place, we were, found a place to sit. This was going to be our headquarters. And it wasn't till we kind of got settled in that we realized who we were sitting behind. So at these big events, the police were a very big group at this time, but it was still sort of the left field of the culture, the new wave and that. So generally a lot of the people at these events were, hey, whatever, open-minded. They were into new music. We seemed to be sitting behind about the only curmudgeons who hated almost everything there all day. They were just really redneck and really obnoxious. And they were just like staring daggers to us, complaining about everything. This day was a winner. This was Friday the 13th, just as a reminder. So from there, amidst the bitchery of the people in front of us and the Spoons, up next was, visually, probably the most memorable part of the day, a Flock of Seagulls.
Oh, yes.
And I say visually...
I remember, I think we got to the front of the stage for them. Because we didn't kind of sort of sit... Because our Scottish friend, he had a ticket for the stands, a seated. So we think me or Wendy sort of went up with our ticket and gave him the ticket, and then we went down, and he kind of hung around with us, and we kind of were wandering around, sort of not really staying in one spot.
Gotcha.
But so we when they were on, I think we got quite close to the front for them. So I remember the hair.
Well, that's the visual thing. Is like, I think it's like, if you say hairstyle 1980s of a pop star, I mean, it still stands out today.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But he doesn't have that now.
No, we saw a Flock of Seagulls, Cublet and I, at an 80s fest here in London in 2018, and indeed, he sounds the same, but his hair is different.
Yeah, we saw him as well, probably around the same time at a similar kind of festival in Leeds, and he just had his baseball cap on, and he had this. He obviously lives in the US now because he's kind of lost his accent. Very American sounding. I
don't know. I guess I can't remember that from when we saw them. That part I can't recall. That's interesting. I know he would have been speaking, but I can't recall that. Interesting. They were fun. They were fun the first time and the second time. I'm not a huge fan, but I thought they were fun both times.
Yeah, I agree.
And that Flock of that 80s fest, also Cyndi Lauper was there and Howard Jones, etc. That'll be coming up way down the line.
Yeah.
201. Also, the Spoons, I saw them one other time. That's actually, because this concert was such a disaster, that's another disastrous concert in my life. And it was David Bowie at CNE Stadium in 1987 for Never Let Me Down, like his one crap tour.
All right.
The Spoons and Duran Duran, who are at the end of their sort of first big period. So anyway, and then we had extremely obnoxious neighbors. Yeah, that was a bad one too. So I guess the message was I shouldn't have seen the Spoons live at festivals.
Yeah. No, that just sounds like a bad thing.
No, so that's my takeaway. I should have only seen them in clubs. So so up next were one of the two bands that for us, we were really there to see, and that was the Beat, or as they're called over here, the English Beat.
Yeah, that was another one we were close up for.
Do you recall? I assume that would also be one of the acts you would most want to have seen.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Any memories of the show?
Were they on that year? I thought they were the year after.
No. The year after was kind of their last. No. The year after is Simple Minds were supposed to be there, and they pulled out James Brown, Peter Tosh, King Sunny Ade, The Fix, and Blue Peter.
Yeah, no, I thought, okay.
We saw, and then also they're coming up in a few episodes at Alumni Hall with REM opening.
Yes, that was a good one.
Yeah. So, do you have any memories of this day?
Of them on the day? Not loads. I remember really, really enjoying them because I was really excited to see them because I really loved all the sort of two-tone ska stuff that was out. So, they were like a big deal, really, that I was really excited to see.
Well, certainly Lady B and I mean, we'd been following them since the first album. So that's one act we were really, really excited and primed to see. Mm-hmm. But the sound was awful. I particularly remember it during their set. It just sounded awful. It really detracted. And these pills, it knocked us out for a day. We'd have these periods where we'd be feeling not too bad, one of us would be, and then it would just come over you again like a wave. And my remembrance of that gig is the band were good. The Beat were really good, but we felt particularly like crap. The sound was terrible. So I could see they were good, but I had a hard time enjoying them. Mm-hmm. But luckily, we both saw them at another gig, 7 or 8 months down the line that was far superior. So
yeah, I've seen them a couple times since over here at festivals, but obviously not the full, it's because they split and there was two different incarnations. So the ones I saw was the Beat with Ranking Roger and Ranking Roger Jr.
Oh, okay. And Ranking Roger just passed away too.
Yeah. So it was good to see him again. They were still good. It was still good, even though it wasn't the proper lineup. Well,
when I get to it's coming up, it'll probably be episode 22, and it's concert number 16. So it's coming up fairly shortly, and I'll go more into the Beat and their history then at that time. But for this time, I was glad I saw them, but I'm much glad I saw them several months later. That was kind of the key gig. Mm. Now, up next was the most controversial set of the day, and it was Joan Jett and the Blackhearts.
Oh, yeah. I remember we went and sat up in the stands for that one. Because people were booing, weren't they?
They were throwing everything they could get at her.
Yeah.
Because this is my take on it now. Joan was with the Runaways. She came from left field rock, and she had done Bad Reputation, and Steve Jones and Paul Cook of the Sex Pistols. Yeah. And of course, none of that stuff had happened over here. It had just been nothing but corporate rock. And by the early 80s, that's kind of when things were one of their biggest divisions. She had that big hit with I Love Rock and Roll, which to me at the time was part of sort of the slick. She'd kind of become part of the slick commercial mainstream. And most of the people who were listening to that weren't listening to alternative, the alternative music of the day. So it was very much an us versus them environment. And she was seen very much as a them, which I now realize this is ridiculous. Joan Jett is absolutely, I have a totally different feeling. And I was booing her initially too, and would like to officially apologize to Joan for being a prat.
I know, it's like when you look back and you think, but the popularity, who she was popular with, doesn't make sense to me now. I don't understand. But I didn't really kind of understand it back then a bit, because I thought she doesn't look like what, you know, 'cause I suppose it was because she had a big hit with I Love Rock and Roll.
Yeah.
So it was for all the people at high school who loved her were all the rockers and the stoners, and they're like, yeah, I love rock and roll, man. You know, that kind of stuff. But I remember when she did because she did a concert at the London Gardens. I didn't go to it, but I was on my way home from school and I was walking through White Oaks Mall, and they were doing a Joan Jett lookalike contest to win tickets. I think it was CKSL or CJBK, one of the two, and she was there.
Oh wow!
With the
She was
Blackhearts.
actually there.
They were judging.
Oh no, that's cool.
Yeah, and I thought it was pretty cool, you know. And there wasn't very many people, so it was funny. And they looked all looked a little bit bemused by it, because the competition they all had to sort of look like her, but then they all had to do like a bit of a lip sync mime to I Love Rock and Roll.
Gotcha. Oh man, I'm just having the visual of that in my mind right now.
And there was a guy there doing it. Who got booed because it was a guy pretending to be Joan Jett.
That's London.
I know, yeah. But yeah, I can remember people throwing stuff on the stage at her, and she went off, didn't she? I remember she went off, and then I don't know whether it was her management or somebody came on and said, if you don't stop throwing things and booing, we're going to close the whole show down.
Yeah. Well, I don't think. Well, they couldn't have shut down the police, but I remember she came on and she
came back on though.
Oh yeah, but when she first came on, it was literally an avalanche of debris being shot in her direction, and she came back on, and eventually I remember her winning the crowd over, especially when she did that version of Crimson and Clover.
Yeah. It was a big hit for her as well. So.
Yeah, but I look back now, and I get it at the time. Everything was so commercial. It was just either commercial or underground, and there was very little in between.
Yeah.
And it's just the time or whatever. Anyway, I have nothing but huge respect for Joan Jett, and I know 3 different people through the years who, in each situation's a bit different, either knew her or had to deal with her. And every single person said the same thing. It's like, she's no Blackheart. She's an absolute sweetheart. Absolutely fantastic, like a very real, grounded human being. Mm-hmm. And I got to see her again. This time I was able to appreciate her at one of the best back-to-back sets I've ever seen. Is I saw her and Courtney Love with a new version of Hole back-to-back in 2010 at Blues Fest. Great double bill.
Yeah.
The thing, it's weird because I think because we were feeling so sick and crappy this day, I actually don't have a ton of memories about the sets. The thing I remember the most about the day, and isn't this special, is, okay, the people in front of us, the obnoxious sort of like suburban redneck trolls in front of us, they were there. I think they were one of the few people there. They were there to see Joan Jett. That's the reason they were there. And I mean, and they had been partying really heavily and just tried to basically ignore every band that was on because they hated everything and everyone who was there. And they had this blanket in front of us, and one of them was this young woman who laid down and fell asleep behind the cooler. And Joan Jett came on. And so her friend leaned over and started shaking her awake. And it's like, you've got to get up. Joan Jett's coming on. You're going to miss Joan Jett. And I still can see her. She sort of just lifted her head up a little bit off the pillow and then just barfed everywhere. And then just conked right back out again, and she missed the set. That's the kind of day it was. So, yeah. But it's that's the part of the day I remember almost the most is Joan Jett and, of course, our neighbor puking. But so that was That was a lovely time. And, oh, by the way, people who, for listeners, that Courtney Love Hole and Joan Jett show from 2010, I actually have a blog entry up on that for its number 150, and it's on the mylifeinconcert.com site. So up next was the biggest reason of all why we went, the Talking Heads. So now at this point, now I had seen them 2 summers previous at Heat Wave, where it was the first show they ever did playing any of the material from Remain in Light, and the crowd was just spellbound. And it had taken them to a new level of, critical acclaim and visibility, especially here in Canada. I actually found out that I used to always hear about, Remain in Light, that didn't really do very well. And I'm like, wait a minute, that was huge. It wasn't until later I found out it was huge here in Canada, which was one of the few countries where it was. Because that was near top 10 album, and Once in a Lifetime was a top 30 hit. But by this point, their reputation, everyone had fully absorbed it. Do you have any memories of their set?
No. It's weird because I can picture it in my head. I remember watching, but I don't remember any of the songs. But somebody told me who was there, who I wasn't with, but they said that it was also David Byrne came out in that big suit that he was in and stopped making sense at one point. Do you remember?
I can't remember that.
That's what he was telling me. But I couldn't remember. I thought, I don't remember that at all. But I do remember really liking it because it was the one and only time I ever managed to get to see him. But I have seen David Byrne on his own, but not, that was the first and only time for the Talking Heads. But I don't remember any of the songs.
There's 3 things I remember about the show. First off, the big thing I remember, no pun intended, was Tina Weymouth was very pregnant during the performance. She had to be about 7 months pregnant. She was quite pregnant. And she was just playing her heart out. And I thought, wow, that's incredible that she's up on stage. I hope she's going to be okay. Yeah. See, it's hard for me to remember a lot of the music because it's completely overshadowed by Heat Wave, where I have so many clear memories, and all this music was there's so many firsts and things to remember. The second gig, there's only one song I really remember, and I'm using it as the title of this episode. And they did that cover, not a cover, they did What a Day That Was. It's a song that David Byrne had written for the Catherine Wheel, the music he wrote to the Toiletharp dance piece. Mm-hmm. And so it was just interesting that they did that track, and I just particularly liked it because it was new. I knew the track, but I had, hearing the band do it, I thought was fantastic. And the third thing is nothing specific, just that they completely blew me away all over again. They were incredible. Mm. And I remember both Lady B and Le Chateau, all 3 of us were just like, wow. So that's really, I don't have specific memories because, again, the other thing, a 4th memory, they finally fixed the sound. This Talking Heads sounded amazing. That was the first set of the day that sounded good. Yeah.
I wonder why that was. Maybe they finally figured it out, or maybe, I don't know.
You would think with a stadium full of people and all those people there, they would have figured that out maybe a little bit sooner. But anyway, they finally got to it to the Talking Heads. So that was the last time I saw the Talking Heads. Now I saw David Byrne with St. Vincent in 2013. The 2 of them performing together when they did that album.
Oh yeah.
That's also up on the blog 176 for those who would want to read it. And that was an amazing show. And the track that got the biggest, sort of whatever went nuts is when he did Burning Down the House, which was on the next album. So
yeah, because I saw him again at a festival, the Big Chill Festival that he was headlining, and he did loads of Talking Head stuff. And all the band were all dressed in white, and he had angel wings, and I can't remember what year that was, though. It must have been about, I think that was 2010.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I could have one band reunite and play that are, still alive, it's the Talking Heads. I would
Yeah.
just to see them perform, they were amazing. Oh, well, and it's a shame they're all together, but I get it. If personalities don't mix and you've kind of been there, you don't necessarily want to go back. But boy, I'd love for them to tour again.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely.
So once the Talking Heads were over, here we were in the evening, probably 9-ish or something. We hadn't been the bathroom in hours. We'd also had almost nothing to drink because we couldn't go inside to get something because we would have been stopped, and they weren't selling any of this on the field. So, but the year before, the police had been terrible. Like, we walked out of the gig, as we had talked about.
Yeah.
And we were like, okay, we're still feeling like crap. Like, we feel like we're going to drop dead. And we have to wait for the bus. So we thought, let's just go now. We'll miss the police. They were terrible last time. And they took forever to come on. And we'll go to the bathroom, relieve ourselves, and then just rest. But unlike the year before, things happened really quickly. And while we were still deliberating, the police came on.
Yeah.
So we thought, okay, well, we're here. And this time, we thought they were amazing. It was night and day from the year before.
Oh, yeah, they were a lot better. Because I remember the first time Sting saying he was having trouble with his voice. So he sounded, they all said it was, like you say, it was a lot better than it was at the first one.
Yeah, this was very high energy. They were just really engaged. The first one, in comparison, they had an off night. They were warned that whatever it wasn't a good night the first time. This really impressed me. We all thought, okay, if we're feeling like crap and we have to stand here, at least we've got a great set of music to appreciate. And they were terrific.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't remember the songs, as usual. I do remember really enjoying them, but I don't remember any particular songs that they played that I thought, well, that was really good. Because I thought they were doing, they were really good on the night overall.
Yeah, with this day, because of all the crap that went on, and there's still more to come, I think my memory of this day is not so much song by song, but the bands I enjoyed, but what happened on the day.
Yeah.
So I probably have fewer memories of the songs than some of the other festivals. Although the one song I do remember is they did that song One World, Not Three, and Ranking Roger from the Beat came out and kind of did some toasting over top of it. Okay, so the police were off the stage. The day was over. Do you have what happened to you after the gig? I'll let
See,
you
I
go
can
first.
remember this. We walked back into the city centre of Toronto, and we thought, let's try and find the police. We were trying to figure out where they would go, which hotel would they be to. So we went to these hotels, and we went to this, I forgot what it was. It was a big, huge, fancy hotel around the city. We went to the bar. Luckily, the bar was still open. So we got ourselves some drinks. And then we went up to the reception and went, "Excuse me, is Sting staying here?" The receptionist looked at me, no, I'll check. No, nobody by the name of Sting. Okay, and we walked away. We thought, what's his name? What's his real name? And then we
Gordon
remember things
Sumner.
like Gordon Sumner.
Yeah.
So we went back to the reception and said, "Excuse me, is Gordon Sumner staying here?" And she went, "Let me have a look. No, nobody of that name." And we thought, she's lying.
Or they check in under names not their own.
Yeah. So then we kind of I don't know why we decided just to hang around and not just go to a bar. We just kind of hung around this hotel lobby. And then we saw this pizza delivery guy come. We thought, I bet that's for Sting. So we followed the pizza delivery guy, and we were like in the lift, in the elevator with him, going, "Who's that for?" And he said, "You can't have any." It's like, "We don't want any. Who's it for?" And he said, "Boris something." And we thought, that's not a real name. That's not a real person. That's got to be Sting. And we followed him followed him to the door of this guy's hotel room, followed him and stood behind him.
I'm amazed you weren't ejected by security. But...
I know, it's hilarious. So we stood there, he knocked on the door, and stood behind him, all excited, thinking Sting was going to answer the door. And it wasn't. Surprise. It was somebody who was obviously called Boris. And we kind of went, "Oh, that's not Sting." And we just walked away.
Well, it kept off the streets after the show, so.
Yeah. And then I think we left, and we thought, well, we couldn't think of anywhere else, and I think we got a bit bored, and then decided to go back to wherever we were staying, a friend of Wendy's, I think. But I think by this time it was too late. There's no public transport available, and we hardly had any money. So we rested inside this giant Henry Moore sculpture that was outside the Ontario Art Gallery.
Yep, I know it well.
Yeah, that big sort of funny thing. So we slept inside there for a little while.
Was it comfortable?
It was warm. It was really comfortable because it was quite windy, and I think it got a bit chilly by that time because it was quite early on in the morning. And then we started walking then, I think, to closer to wherever we were staying, wherever it was. I can't remember which part of Toronto it was. And I think that's about all I can remember from then. How was your trip back to London on the bus?
Oh, God. So we get out. I mean, the moment the set's over, we go through the doors and literally run to the bathroom, and I peed for about 5 minutes. And then we thought, okay, the day's done. We're survived it. We are so burnt out. I mean, think of at the end of a day being out at a festival, you're kind of burnt out anyway. Well, if you're feeling sick on top of it, so we're like, we just want to get home. And so we thought, this will be nice. We're going to get on a quiet, air-conditioned bus, and we're going to be quiet, and everyone's going to be burnt out and sleeping, and it's going to be a nice, quiet, dark, cool, relaxing ride home. Unfortunately, nothing of the sort happened, because we got on the bus maybe about 2/3 of the way back. Mm-hmm. And I'd say the last third of the bus was a large group of very, very drunken, obnoxious frat boys who they started singing Roxanne at the top of their lungs. And there was a female Music Man tour guy who thought this was hilarious, as did several people on the bus, and kept going again. And to these people, every time they did it, it got funnier. And I'm going to give you, we have done a recreation of how this sounded on the bus. Now, once again, people, this is a recreation. Do not try this at home. So in trying to sleep and feeling like death, we were subjected to this. Over and over and over, and it just didn't end. After about 20 minutes, I wanted to feed them to a brontosaurus. And you're just sitting there and you feel like death warmed over, and you're like, is this ever going to end? Is this day ever going to end? Am I ever going to get home? Yeah. So that was our trip home. It was lovely.
Nice.
Head splitting, and it just didn't stop. Eventually,
I slept in a Henry Moore sculpture.
When you were saying that, I was thinking about how preferable an option that would have been. So eventually, I mean, the trip was 2 hours. It seemed like 3 days. And we got home and got dropped back at Victoria Park, where we had, of course, started the journey. And I'm sure we walked off the bus, but it felt more like we crawled off of it. Oh, and I think it was Le Chateau or Lady B. I think it was Le Chateau had his father's car, and drove us home. And it was one of those things where you wake up the next day feeling like death warmed over, and it's like, I'm not going to do any of this again. But I did flush what I brought back and called the person in question. I said, did you take any of those? No, not yet. Flush them. Do not deal with that person again. And meanwhile, we transported back the cooler, and inside of it, 2 or 3 completely sealed containers of screwdrivers. We didn't touch them. After all that, we didn't touch a single. We had maybe a sandwich. God. Yeah. The next night, we started drinking them. We all went back to LB's and, okay, now we're sort of somewhat revived. And so we kind of took them a while to polish them off. I remember it was sitting in LB's fridge for a while, in one of them. But yeah, so that was a complete waste of our time and energy. And while it was a great day of music, that's just brutal. It was a brutal day from start to finish.
The weird thing is, when I think back about these gigs, especially like the full day ones like that, it's like I don't remember going to the toilet. I don't remember, getting a drink or buying something to eat. I don't remember eating or drinking or doing any kind of bodily functions, which I find kind of weird. I must have obviously done it, but, I don't remember it.
I think at this event I had more pressing things to remember about the day at this event. I do remember at Heatwave kind of nibbling throughout the day, but they didn't. I mean, now you go to these concerts and there's people going around with drinks and food and like alcohol and everything. You just did not have that back in the day. Not in Toronto anyway. Mm. So in terms of the legacy of this day, it's interesting because I started writing the blog in 2010, and this one I put up, I think, right before Christmas of 2010. And I had to do some fact-checking research, and when I went online, there was only one thing that had been written about this, and it was a reposting of a Toronto Star review. So I wrote this piece, and then a couple of years later, someone, won't say who or where, or if it was an article or a book or part of a compilation or whatever, but wrote something about this concert. And so I went out and got it. I was, interested in reading, and some of it was about the concert. And when I got to some paragraphs that were observations about sort of, like looking back and observations about this concert and thoughts on it, I was reading it and thinking, wow, this sounds awfully familiar to some things that I had written. And I just kind of thought, well, it happens. Some people have the same idea. And
yeah.
But then I got a couple of emails from people at the blog saying, I kind of wanted to find out more and found your blog entry, and boy, what you wrote here sure is similar to, and I thought, okay then. So yeah, I think may have been a little bit of plagiarism going on, but that's all.
Wow.
Now in those just a few paragraphs, but yeah. Anyway, so.
Yeah, like sort of going on like what you're saying there, it is strange because you don't really see a lot of, like when you go online to sort of look up. When I remember looking up years ago trying to find information and videos and stuff of the Police Picnic concerts, and there wasn't a lot. There's not a lot out there. It's bizarre.
Well, I think it's also too, we were in Canada, so we had a much smaller media sort of presence, and so you had the major papers, but you didn't have weekly magazines. What we did have, actually, and I want to bring this up, I'm glad you mentioned it, we had the new music, which was the City TV weekly music magazine show. Now, for Police Picnic 81, somebody finally posted the original 23-minute whole thing they did on the whole day, and I am almost positive they did them for Police Picnic 82 and 83.
I'm sure they probably did, yeah.
Because I think it was, I can't find them online. I've been looking. So if you're listening and you have a video of the new music coverage for either of these festivals, please, I beseech you, put them online so we can watch them again. Because the one for 80
back some memories.
Well, for quite a while, the only one online for 81 was this edited 3-minute version, and in the last year, someone had the whole 23-minute segment and put it up. It was amazing to see it again, and it goes nicely when people are reading the piece or listening to the podcast. I try to put that up on the site, mylifeinconcert.com, accompanying videos or coverage of the event. So let's hope that footage will be found and go back up.
Yeah.
So you'll be back for the next episode, which was the second show I went to at CNE Stadium, although in the grandstand form, and it was just a few weeks later. Also, that second trip to the CNE was substantially better than the first one. In fact, the next concert, which we'll be looking at, is one of the best shows I ever saw, and it'll be episode 18, concert number 12, The Clash and Black Uhuru at the CNE Grandstand.
Yes, I remember that.
Really remember that one. So so thank you once again, special guests, for taking the time to share your memories, and we'll be hearing from you very soon as we relive an incredible concert and a certainly, well, for me, a much happier event than this we talked about. All right, talk to you soon, and thanks for coming again.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
This wraps up episode 17 and my look back at Police Picnic 82. Just a reminder that you can read the original blog entry at mylifeinconcert.com, and of course it includes, as I mentioned, additional info, graphics, videos, blah, blah, blah. Also, at the end of the interview, I made the appeal for those who may have videos containing the new music coverage of Police Picnics 82 and 83. I'd also like to add in, if anyone has the original new music Heat Wave episode, because it was either an entire episode or almost an entire episode about the festival. And all I can find online now is just a small condensed snippet. So if anyone out there, if you've got those videos, please digitize them and put them up so we can see them. Also, if you want to skip ahead and read about the third and final Police Picnic in August of 1983, that's on the blog. It's concert number 19. Now, that turned out to be yet another day of altered adventures, although this time things worked out much, much better. Once again, please like, follow, and subscribe on Facebook and Instagram. And if you've been at any of these gigs, once again, share your memories on the blog, the YouTube channel, the Facebook page. You know the drill. Tune in next time as I skip forward 3 weeks and back to the CNE in Toronto for episode 18 and one of the best concerts I ever saw. The Clash and Black Uhuru, Sunday, September 5th, 1982. A show for the ages. Stay tuned for Bouncing Masses, Getting the Message, and the story of Lady Bump. And of course, special guest returns once again with his memories of this incredible show. Once again, I'd like to thank all of you out there from around the world for taking the time to listen to the podcast and support mylifeinconcert.com. I'm your host, Various Artists, saying bye for now, and let's meet up at the next concert.